Good evening, everyone. I'm Rakhi Gautam from greytHR, the moderator for this Parichay webinar session today. Thank you so much for joining us. The topic for today's webinar is how HR can track and improve employee well-being. Now, before we start with the discussion, let me quickly take you all how this session goes. So the session is divided in two parts. The first part will be the discussion with our expert, which will then be followed by an audience Q&A. So audience Q&A is where time is all yours. You can start putting across your questions and we will take them up towards the end. Also, this session is currently being recorded. So if you happen to miss out on anything, do not worry at all. We have got you covered. We'll share the recording of the session with you once it is available. And it will also be there on greytHR's official YouTube channel under the playlist Parichay. So you can always go there and watch it later. Now, if you feel like, any of your colleagues or teammates, friends, anybody who would get benefited from this session, you can still share this link with them and they should be able to join us live. Okay, I think we have the quorum with us to start the discussion. To give you an overview, right, as organizations in India continue to adapt to dynamic work environment, the focus on employee well-being has never been more important. Employee happiness directly impacts productivity, retention, and of course, overall business success. So in this webinar today, we'll be discussing the various strategies and tools HR professionals can leverage to enhance and track employee well-being. From defining workplace happiness to exploring key metrics, we'll cover best practices to improve the overall work culture of your organizations, where workplace dynamics are rapidly evolving. And of course, we are thrilled to have with us Mr. Ankur Poddar, Head HR India Consumer Business Lead, Culture and HR Operations, Lenovo, with us today. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ankur. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Same here. Thank you for having me, Rakhi. Thank you.
Let me quickly take you all through his profile. Ankur is a seasoned HR leader with over 15 years of rich experience in talent management, culture transformation, and HR operations. As the head HR at Lenovo, he drives strategic people initiatives to enhance workforce engagement and organizational effectiveness. Previously, he held key HR leadership roles at Airtel and Marico, shaping HR strategies across diverse industries. Passionate about fostering a high-performance culture, Ankur specializes in talent acquisition, leadership development, and employee experience, making a lasting impact on business growth and people-centric workplaces. So I can say this for all that we've gotten the perfect person with us today to join us on this very important discussion of how to track and enhance, employee well-being and create a positive employee experience for everybody at the organization. So before we start off with the discussion, I would quickly launch a poll to understand from all of you, our audience, as we always do. We want to make this session more engaging, and we also want to hear your insights. So I'm just going to launch a poll now, and I would urge each one of you to participate in this poll. It's not a right or a wrong question, poll. This is just to understand your perspective. So which factor do you think has the biggest impact on employee well-being? Is it high workload and burnout, lack of career development opportunities, work-life balance challenges, leadership and workplace culture, or hybrid remote work time limits? Considering that we are going to be talking about employee well-being today, I think this question would help us set the context for the discussion. As I said, this is not a right or a wrong question, because if somebody asks me, I'm going to, choose all the questions which are there on screen. So I would urge each one of you to participate. We already have 60% participation. I'm going to keep the poll for another 10 seconds, and then we'll share the responses. Okay, let me end the poll and share the result with all of you. So 40%, majority of you are saying work-life balance challenges has the biggest impact on employee well-being. 27% leadership and workplace culture. 18% high workload and burnout. 12% lack of career development opportunities, and 3% at hybrid remote work dynamics. So thank you so much, everybody, once again for sharing your thoughts with us. And as I said, this definitely helps us set the context for this discussion today. So I'm going to quickly jump onto the first question to you, Ankur. As organizations in India adapt to changing work environments, especially that we have seen after the pandemic, the focus on employee well-being has become essential. Right. So from your experience, what are the most effective strategies HR can implement to enhance employee happiness and foster a positive work culture overall?
Right. So my first response to that question is that you can't have a universal strategy for well-being, because well-being is very contextual, and very contextual to the environment in which you are operating, right? It is contextual to the sector or the industry that you belong to. It is contextual to the location in which you are working, whether you're a salesperson working on the field, or you're a desk person working in the office. So I'm saying it's very, very contextual, highly contextual. The second thing we need to understand is that it's very pivotal or dependent on the individual also. So what might stress you or what might be your well-being levers might not be my well-being levers. So my well-being levers could be the quality of work that I am doing. I'm deriving a lot of satisfaction from the kind of work I am doing. Somebody's well-being lever could be that he or she is getting flexibility or time off from the work. For the other person, it could be the manager, the quality of relationship that you have with the manager, right? And like you said, career could be one of the reasons that can motivate or demotivate you in terms of your well-being measures. So it's very, very contextual. So I don't think there's a universal strategy here. I think companies should, in their context, should identify the levers which are impacting well-being positively and negatively both, and then come up with a strategy. Now, the strategy should be at different levels. One is a strategy at an org level, which can be more around policies, right? So I have certain pre-coded, well-defined policies which are going to govern the well-being of the employees. That's the first piece. It could be a leave policy, it could be work arrangements policies, it could be any kind of policies that you talk about, right? The second lever is the leadership. What is the leadership mindshare in terms of employee well-being, right? Is that an agenda for the leadership team or no? I think HR cannot drive the well-being. HR can only enable the well-being of employees, right? Ultimately, it is the managers and the leaders who have to drive the well-being in their teams, right? So the mindshare of the leaders is very, very important, I think, in terms of how important is employee well-being for them, right? Is that a priority or not a priority? It's not nothing right or wrong, but we have to be very clear about what are leaders thinking about well-being, right, of the employees. The third level could be the managers themselves who are managing those teams, because that is the most impactful environment that you're a part of. For 8 to 9 hours a day, you work with your manager, whether remotely or in office. And I think the lever as a manager is a very important lever in terms of how is manager managing the well-being, from a strategy perspective, right? So I would say these are a couple of ways to go about, building a strategy. Strategy can be in terms of policies, it can be in terms of leadership interventions, it can be in terms of managerial behaviors. Also, it can be in terms of your entire piece around where do you work and how do you work. That's very important, right? For me, if flexibility is important, then I'm looking for a workplace arrangement policy around it, right? So this is, in a nutshell, my take on this question.
Thank you so much for that, Ankur. And I particularly would like to highlight how you mentioned that, HR is an enabler, and the leadership and the managers are those, who actually drive, who are at the forefronts. So it's a collective effort. We can't put, HR into everything and say, okay, HR did not come up with a strategy or a policy to enhance workplace culture. It's also these important roles that HR, the managers and the leadership play. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And yes, of course, something which might be working for me as an individual, something that I might prefer as an individual, you might not prefer, or, organization for that matter. So I think when it comes to happiness in general also, and not just, employee well-being, I think as individuals also, we need to understand that it's a two-way street, right? What we also have to be honest with ourselves to say that, okay, this is what is making me happy, and maybe this organization or this environment might not be well suited for me, and then I might have to say look somewhere else, or I might have to or I would have to be honest with my manager, say that, okay, these are the things that I'm struggling with, and I don't like particularly how this thing is, being placed, or I feel like, okay, this is where, culture is lacking, and I have to tell this to my manager or say HR. So it's a two-way communication street also, I think, the way we can place it. So thank you so much for setting the context, Ankur, for that. Now, we did see in our poll also that work life balance got the majority of votes in terms of the biggest impact, right? So my next question is actually tailored to that. There's a report by Times Job Survey in 2023 that said that 60% of Indian employees are seeking organizations that prioritize work-life balance. And I think off late, this is not something which is very recent, but yes, I think in the last 7 to 8 years, we have seen the talks of work-life balance literally everywhere. Even when we are meeting our family, friends, we have like a high school reunion, we talk about, okay, as much as I love my job, I also want work life balance, right? Something that wasn't part of conversations before. So when it comes to HRs, right, what role do you think they can play in creating policies, especially that ensure that this balance exists, and how can it overall contribute to the employee well-being at large?
Right. So from an HR perspective, I think there are two parts to this question. So one is more on the design part of the policy, right? So let's take an example of a hybrid policy. Hybrid policy, pivots around flexibility as a motivator, right? And some people work remotely, and some people are working from office. Now there are companies which are saying you have to be in office for 5 days a week. There are companies which are saying we're okay if you are 2 days or 3 days you're in office, rest you can work remotely. So I think what is the stand on the hybrid policy or the work arrangement policy is very, very critical for, and that clarity has to be there. And the other thing is, so where do I work from, which is the hybrid policy, and when do I work? Now, there are companies which are working on staggered working hours, right? Now, if you look at a lot of these Denmark and a lot of these companies, Scandinavian companies, they're also experimenting with 3 days working or 4 days working at max. So a lot of work is going on there. That do we really want people to work, say, 45 hours or 50 hours? There have been a lot of debates on what L&T's chairman said and all that. So that's the second piece, which is how much time should I spend on work, right? Which HR should kind of define from a culture and a policy standpoint very, very clearly, right? The other is the ways of working, in the sense that this question reminds me of Amazon, and this is Jeff Bezos' principle, which says that have a meeting with only so many people who can consume one pizza, right? You don't need more than one pizza, so only get so many people who are enough for having a one pizza. Don't have more people. So don't invite too many people for meetings. Have minimal meetings, because that's all consuming into the time, right? As an employee, you have your work to do, but if you're having too many meetings, then again, it's impacting your work-life balance, right? So that's on the design part in terms of policies, ways of working, culture part. The other is more reactive and more post-facto, that if you are seeing that in pockets, the work-life balance is going for a toss, and you will see signs of exhaustion, you will see signs of people, getting weathered out, stress, there will be higher attrition. There could be the engagement scores will tell you that something is wrong in the way the mood is going down. Those could be red flags for HR to raise to the management and the leadership team and say, hey, there seems to be a problem in these pockets, because work-life balance, to my mind, cannot be same across the organization. Like I started by saying, it's very contextual. So work-life balance in your team could be better than my team, because you're managing in a certain fashion. The nature of work is different. The expectations are different, right? So that is the second part, where as a sounding board, the HR managers also keep a track, or they monitor what is the work-life balance around, and are there any adverse symptoms that they are seeing, like if people are falling sick very often, or if you look at the leave utilization data of the sick leaves, and you are seeing that in particular department, people are taking too many sick leaves. So then possibly that should raise a flag in my mind that why are so many people taking sick leaves in this department? What is wrong? Is it that the work overload is causing stress, which is leading to these sick leaves, or is it something else? So I think HR has to be completely vigilant to kind of pick up these signs and then take corrective actions. But that is more post facto. The real charm lies in doing the first part, which is you get your processes, policies, structures right. Is the resourcing right, for example? Now, if there's a certain amount of work to be done, there's a dimensioning to be done. How many people do you need to do that work? If you're putting less people to do that work, automatically you're creating stress because you need a certain more number of people to do that work optimally, but you have kept less manpower. Could be because of cost pressures, could be because of other reasons. But by design, you're creating stress because the other two people have to take a higher workload. So those are things that have to be taken at a design level.
Oh, thank you for that, Ankur. And especially, the way you highlighted about watching out for the red signs or red flags, right? Which is something that we see often happening. But what is it that the HRs or managers, for that matter, also are they working on it or not? Are they recognizing these signs, or have they just recognized it and left it there as is? Or are they working on it? Are they trying to come up with solutions? Have these one-on-ones, or speak with the managers as you suggested, or seeing that, okay, if the workload is too high, or maybe you started off with having too many people in a meeting where they're not required, right? So I think that is also one thing. And we see a lot of these memes also going around on that particular situation, where we start the day with a meeting, then we end the day with a meeting, and throughout the day we have meetings, right? So it's also important how we structure our day, and how we are putting, how we are designing the roles and responsibility for each employee, and telling them that, okay, this is your task. They also recognize how they are contributing to the overall objective, and not underplaying or overplaying anything which is adding to the stress. So thank you for highlighting that. Right now, you talked about individuality, right, or individual preferences and needs. And my next question is actually related to that, because in a diverse country like India, employees would have different needs and preferences, right? So how can, of course you have touched upon this, but if you'd like to elaborate a bit more on this, how can HR design customized well-being programs that are inclusive of the diverse cultural, regional, and personal preferences of the workforce? Is there a possibility, or is there a roadmap that we can follow? I'm sure a lot of our HR folks in the audience would be interested, particularly in learning about that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and the challenge is that at a policy level, it may be difficult because for a company which is operating at a global or a national level, to break it down to the state level or the city level, it becomes very difficult, to kind of tailor made your policies to a region. While you're right that the cultural nuances will vary, but I think the behaviors can play a very important role here. And when I say behaviors, it could be both leadership behaviors, it could be both manager behaviors, it could be both also peer behaviors. So let me give an example. When I had one of my postings in West Bengal, based out of Kolkata, and as part of my induction, I was told that the emotions in West Bengal are a little high. People are a little more emotional, which was a compliment. And they also have some preferences in terms of the way they want to drive their performance, right? So you have to kind of manage them accordingly, right? You can't use the same approach that you're using for people in Delhi, for example, or Gurgaon, for example. There, the aggression quotient was little slightly higher, and it was very different. When I moved to Mumbai, in one of my postings, I was told that people commute for 2 hours, say from Thane to come here. So there are a lot of regional challenges in considering commutation. So that also kind of has a bearing on their well-being or their workload or whatever it is. So you need to have well-being measures more around flexibility for these people, because they have to commute a long distance, right? Compared to a tier 2 city where possibly the office might be nearby and you don't have to spend so much of time and efforts in kind of. So I would say that empathy from the managers is the key word. If you ask me, that sensitivity is the key word. That I as a leader cannot behave similarly in all the geographies or all the regions. No, I'll have to kind of taper down, not tailor made myself to the nuances there. What are people preferences? What are people expectations? What are their lifestyles, right? What are their priorities over there? What are the geographical modalities there, right? In terms of, like we spoke about commutation, They could be a place where a lot of natural calamity is happening. Then you have to have a different bearing altogether towards people, right? So I would say behaviors at all levels, and how we kind of manage the sentiments of the people is important. At a policy level, you can do something on the holiday part. Like holidays in north are different from south, east, and west. So region wise, you can vary the holidays depending on their preferences, right? The people would have festive preferences, religious preferences. You can always have policies that I will give you a certain set of holidays which are for north are very different from that of south, because they celebrate different festivals. So you're giving them time to spend time with their families. It's a step towards their well-being and towards their work-life balance, right? But beyond that, honestly, I have not seen too much of customization on policies per se. Yeah.
But no, very valid point in terms of holidays, right? Because we see this happening often. So this is definitely something that HRs, can take into consideration and actually implement. And also, you talked about empathy, which is so very important, and not just as HR professionals who are, also called people professionals. So they have to be empathetic. They have to understand the emotions. They have to be sensible enough to be understanding enough, right? But not just as HRs, but also as managers, I think it's very important that we lead with empathy, that we understand that, everybody has their own preferences, they have their own situations, and not everything can be about work all the time. And that's when we are understanding, I think we automatically contribute to the employee well-being that we are talking about. So thank you for highlighting that. Now, my next question is, there's a research from Gallup that happened in 2024 that revealed that highly engaged employees can lead to 20% lower turnout rates, which is, of course, we'll all agree with that. So what are some key HR strategies that can drive employee engagement happiness, therefore, reducing this turnover? Because we know when employees are engaged, like happily engaged, not overburdened with work, they of course, have more productivity and they feel happy, they feel satisfied. So what are some, strategies that we can work around?
Sure. I think employee engagement, again, like I said, is contextual to the business that you are in as a company, because your people engagement strategy should talk to the business strategy. If you are an expanding company, you will hire more, you will, and if you are a company which is a challenger company in terms of performance, the focus will be to get the market share by driving driving hardcore performance over there. Then there could be a market leader which is there, which is sitting at the top, which is enjoying a monopoly. The idea there is to sustain the motivation or the engagement levels and ensure that you kind of maintain your market leadership there. So it's a lot to do with the business. It's a lot to do with the work that we are in. Manufacturing setup will have different engagement. There'll be more community feeling because people have to come every day to the assembly lines and kind of to the production, compared to people in the office, which might be a little off and on. So completely contextual and dependent on business nature of work that we do. But if you were to ask me specifically, I would say that those Gallup 12 questions are very good. They talk about learning and development, they talk about career, they talk about recognition, they talk about resources and tools, and those are in progressive order. So the starting point you'll have to measure on which dimensions is my engagement level low. So because these are 12 different dimensions, right? So is it the social quotient which is low? Is it the career mobility which is a problem? Is it the learning and development where people are facing a challenge? Is it that people don't have clarity about their work, right? What needs to be done? So I would say a diagnostics has to be done. We have to hear out people. Are they adequately resourced? Are they clear what is expected from them? And basis that, the engagement strategy or the happiness strategy has to be designed. But I can give you an example, a very interesting example. I was reading that in Japan, people have this tendency of smoking a lot, right? So in fact, they say that there's a high, it's a habit that people smoke a lot. So in one of the companies, or I don't know which one, that people used to take a lot of smoke breaks and they were smoking a lot. So it was impacting productivity also, because people are stepping out, smoking, then coming back, again stepping out, and they would go in groups. So it's that, and of course it has a health pairing also, because smoking you generally say is not good for health. So they started measuring the smoke breaks in terms of tag in and tag out time or whatever. I don't know what how they did it, and they said that if you save so much of your smoking time, we'll give you extra leaves at the end of the year. So 6 to 7 extra health leaves at the end of the year. Then there are some companies in US who are giving well-being leaves now. So they say that every quarter, during the start of every quarter, you take one well-being leave, which is that you just rejuvenate and recharge yourself for the next quarter, right? So those are there. So those are creative ways of doing it, but it will really depend on what is needed. What is the problem? Yeah, that you're trying to solve.
No, of course, but yes, definitely creative ways and creative
Yeah.
strategies. To see, like you talked about tracking where engagement levels are low, and we are talking about this tracking and enhancing employee experience or employee well-being. Until we track, until we recognize that problem, we'll not be able to know how to enhance it, right? So it's very important that we measure these and we act on it as well, like the way these other two companies did. I think creative ways for sure, and we all can take notes. I hope nobody wants to. I just hope, yes, that we don't have like a lot of smoking breaks in other organizations. That would be a very negative to the health too. But yes, very creative ways, and we can look at those. Moving on to my next question, which is this is a little debatable, right? So, of course, in the start of the pandemic, we saw complete remote working. And then a lot of people, because when it comes to employees, right, and a lot of us, we move out from our, small town to come to these big cities, metros to work, right? And we stay away from our family. Pandemic kind of gave us an opportunity to go back and stay with family and then work. And I think a lot of people, especially Gen Zs, are preferring, work from home and remote working. And then there are companies who've started giving a lot of, I think 60 to 70% have started hybrid now, gone our work from home completely. So when it comes to that, there's of course one thing. Okay, how can you track, employee well-being in these virtual environments where you're not seeing them every day? Because one thing to instantly know how somebody is feeling, or they are feeling, or they're happy, not happy, satisfied, not satisfied, is just looking at them, right? And how engaged they are in meetings, or just being there in office. But when it comes to a virtual setup, all of that is gone, right? So how do we track employee well-being then? Do we have like these creative tools or something? How do we do that? How do we keep the communication going on, and how do we keep them engaged? Any strategies that HRs can implement in their organizations?
Yeah, in fact, that's a very important question because engagement by definition largely is an office engagement, and people who are working remotely many a times get missed out. And what also applies here is out of sight, out of mind syndrome, which is, if I'm seeing somebody in the office, I know how the person is feeling, how the person is behaving, what is the mental state. But if somebody is just not in my sight, then I don't know what he or she is going through, right? And working from home has its own challenges. You have to bear with the family, you have to manage distractions at home. So it has its own set of challenges. The biggest problem is the social anxiety that you develop because you're not in office and you feel that you're feeling left out. Compared to your peers who are working in the office, they are working with the manager closely in the office. They're having regular communications. On the other side, you are just far off, connected only virtually. On a need basis is when the communication happens. So those problems are there. There are 2, 3 ways to handle this. One is, I think regular check-ins is very important. And when I say regular check-ins by the manager, by the HR, by the peers is very, very important. And of course, it will happen virtually, right? So how often is the manager connecting with the team member who is working remotely? What is the frequency? What is the cadence? And then also, is he checking? That's the first part. Is it only a pure work-related meeting, or is he also checking how are you doing? How are you feeling? How are things with you? Right. So that kind of little conversation in your connects is very, very important. Otherwise, all of us get on a Zoom call or a Teams call. We start with the agenda, we finish up with the agenda, and we just disconnect. Right. We don't have this mindset of checking with the other person, how are you doing? Right. or some companies have it, some don't have it. But I think that's very important, especially for people who are remote, because we don't know what they're going through. The second part is that we should have regular engagement initiatives in the office where we can call those people to come and join, right? Whether these are your town halls or these are all hands meetings or whatever these you want to call out, or these are some employee activities. But remote people cannot be always remote. You also have to build those linkages with them so that they are connected to the office, they're connected to the people in the office, they're connected to the events in the office, which will also give you a good sense of how they are doing, what they are going through, right? When they come to office, they'll talk to a lot of people, there'll be camaraderie, there'll be bonhomie. That again will give you a lot of this thing. The third dimension to this is you should have counseling services like EAP, which is employee assistance programs, available for people across, including people in office, especially for people in remote, because they can reach out to the counselors if they need some help. If they're going through some dilemma in mind or they need some guidance, they can reach out to the counselors and seek help, right? And so those are some of the measures to my mind which are there. So I would say organization equally has the obligation to stay connected with the employees. You can't say that he's working remotely or she's working remotely, so what can I do? That beyond the point, because you have to engage, but that's a big challenge, right? A conversation over a WhatsApp versus a conversation in person, there is a difference in terms of impact, right? You can read the body language, you can read the gestures, you can hear the emotions flowing through, but a digital platform can give you as many words. That's it, nothing beyond that. Those challenges are there.
Thank you for highlighting that. And yes, of course, it's the responsibility of the organization, the HR team, the leadership team to stay connected with their employees even when they're working virtually or remotely, right? So there are, as you highlighted, there are many ways to connect with them. One-on-one meetings we can have. There's a feedback mechanism that has to be there. We can have like quarterly meetings or town halls or all hands, as you suggested. So that even if we are working remotely, it shouldn't feel like that, okay, we are working remotely, but there shouldn't be a gap. There shouldn't be miscommunication or there shouldn't be lack of understanding amongst all the parties involved, right? So thank you so much for highlighting that. Now, my next question is something, similar to this, right? When we talk about well-being, there are lots of well-beings. There's financial well-being, there's physical well-being, there's mental health well-being, there's psychological well-being, right? And especially in India, there was a report by Aon in 2024 that revealed that 50% of Indian employees are dissatisfied with their current mental health benefits. Now, we of course see a lot of physical activities maybe being planned by our HR team, some fun activities to team bond and all of that, right? But when it comes to mental health benefits, we do get health benefits. We get, say, insurance and medical insurance, all of that. But when it comes to mental health benefits, we have 50% saying that they're dissatisfied with what they are currently being offered. So in your experience, if you have to suggest what can be the steps that HRs can take to improve these mental health support and ensure that employees feel that they are being heard, that they are not being ignored and they are being given what they truly deserve in terms of a mental health benefit. And it shouldn't be just a tick in the sheet that, okay, this was a benefit that we had to provide and we did something. But what is the actual impact that we are able to drive through that? Any suggestions that we can share?
Yeah, sure. So this, I think, in the Indian context, this is not at a very advanced stage. We're at a very initial stage as far as the mental health is concerned, because health by definition de facto becomes physical health for us. And the other problem is mental health you can't measure also, right? So what you are going through in your head, unless you specifically tell, you cannot make out, the other person cannot make out. So I think the first point, if you ask me, is an open culture which has mechanisms for people to speak up. If you ask me, that is the first step, right? That, like you rightly said, there have to be sessions where people can speak up, they can express, they can share. That is when you will come to know from a detection and disclosure point of view that there is some problem and you need this thing, right? I've seen a lot of initiatives in terms of mental health talks, getting experts from outside coming and giving talks on how you can nurture your brain or how you can take care of your mental health, or for that matter, even doing some meditation classes or giving sponsoring some medical, meditation or yoga classes for the employees by subsidizing it. All those you can do. Those are all there. But if you ask me, the, the most important part is the sensitization of the managers and to some extent even the employees to watch out for these symptoms in their peers or in their team members, right? So today, if I understand what is depression, if I understand what is anxiety, if I understand, these kind of, ailments better, and if I'm seeing that somebody is feeling low or somebody is sounding low for very long or somebody is taking a lot of leaves and we've seen a drop in their productivity, we've seen a drop in the engagement levels, possibly he or she is going through something wrong, something in his head, could be stress or whatever that is, right? Could be. So that sensitization and that sensitivity towards mental health issues and how do they look like, how do they manifest, how do we capture them, how do we identify them, to my mind is the starting step, if you ask me, right? Because mental health is so local in nature that only when I talk to you closely, I converse with you openly is when I'll get to know that you're going through something. And right now, people don't have comfort about talking about these things to anyone, including the manager, right? So it's a taboo in Indian thing, right? You're not perceived to be strong if you're talking about mental health issues. So I would say culture which breeds openness, where and a culture which breeds sensitization in terms of understanding these issues better, so that we can empathize and we can relate with the issues, and managers can step in to support the person is important, if you ask.
Very valid and very true. Culture is all that makes the difference, I think, at the end of the day, right? If you have
Yeah.
the right culture and you have the culture of, open communication, people can come to you, talk to you without feeling judged, without these inhibitions, right? I think we would be able to create a big difference. So thank you so much for highlighting that. Now, any conversation that we have these days, it can't be completed until we talk about technology or specifically artificial intelligence into that, right? So I just wanted to share a stat that says the use of artificial intelligence in HR function is on the rise in India, with over 40% of companies using AI tools to track employee performance and engagement. That's according to NASSCOM report in 2024. Now, when it comes to employee well-being and happiness measurements, right, how can HR teams utilize these AI tools or features to enhance? Do we have, is there any use case that you would like to share with us that, okay, this is how it can be done? Because tracking, it generally is a big task, right? And when we include AI into anything, it becomes more complicated. Even if it is not, it feels like, okay, this is more complicated, right? So how can we simplify this for HR professionals, and anything that you can share with us on this?
Yeah. So look, my 2 cents on this is there are a lot of tools which are coming up. So there are sentiment capturing tools which capture the sentiments. But there's one tool that we use and which I have also used for quite some time, which is Infito Amber, which kind of does a pulse check on a regular basis. It'll keep checking with you. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's your mood? It's a AI-based chatbot, and what it does is that bases your life cycle in the organization, whether you're new joinee or you are old hand in the system or whatever that is, it'll pick up the levers, in terms of the motivators or the engagement drivers that might be applicable for you in that life cycle. And basis that it'll kind of ask you relevant questions. And if you're a new joinee, it'll ask you how's your mood, how are you finding the new company, how's your onboarding going, how's your induction going, right? How are you liking the culture? So those are initial questions that he'll ask. The tool will ask you, and that can be converted into cohort analysis, sentiment analysis. You can find out themes for different cohorts of employees, what's working, what's not working, and take actions.
Thank you for that, Ankur. Yes, definitely. I think employee pulse is something that as HRs, especially, it's their responsibility to keep a track on that and see if we have a healthy employee pulse at our organization or not. So thank you for highlighting that. Now, this has been a very insightful discussion for sure. There were a lot of key takeaways, from this discussion. So thank you so much for sharing all of that which you did. But before I move on to the audience Q&A, I just have one last question to maybe sum up and conclude this discussion today. Is we have discussed and we have seen how there's a rise and focus on employee well-being, and we see that trends are suggesting that organizations will need to focus more on employee well-being, right? So how do you foresee HR adapting to these emerging trends and technologies, and how can they prepare themselves for the future? If there's any maybe a guide that you would like to leave them with.
I think it starts with the business. Again, I'm saying it starts with the business. Like HR cannot say, I'll drive the well-being, I'll take care of well-being, unless there's a buy-in from the business, right? Because business is giving you the assigning the work priorities and managing performance and all that. So I would say if the way it has to start is that HR has to embed these priorities at the business level, right? So what are the strategic priorities of the organization? They want to grow business. They want to be profitable. Do they want happy employees? Do they want do they want employees who with a lot of well-being in them so that they are more productive, right? So I think it starts with the strategic priorities of the organization, and then everything else, structure, policies, tools, culture, everything will follow, right? But if that alignment at organizational level, leadership level is not there, then you can locally do some things, which is okay, but gradually, the culture flows from top. So I think that's important.
No, very, very true. I think, as you rightly mentioned, it's very important that we keep this as one of the business goals also, right? Because the heart of any organization is people. And if, when they are happy, when they are satisfied, when their well-being is at the top, they give you the best results. They give you the best, revenue. So it's important that leadership team is involved since the very beginning to establish this. So thank you so much for this, Ankur. Great conversation today. Loved this chat, and I have a lot of questions already lined up in the audience Q&A, so I'll quickly move on to that. And we have some 13 minutes with us. We'll try to cover as many questions as we can. Some of this I think we have already discussed, but if you want a deep dive into that, we'll definitely do. And if any questions are unanswered for the audience, you can I'll share the links with you. You can reach out to us separately also, and we'll take them up. Okay, so starting with the first question, which is, what are some of the most effective tools or frameworks HRs can use to measure employee happiness and well-being in a meaningful way?
Sorry, can you just come again? I missed that. Okay.
So what are some of the most effective tools or frameworks which HRs can use to measure employee happiness and well-being in a meaningful way?
So measurement-wise, you can take Sirota surveys. There, a lot of these standard Mercer surveys. They have questions around: does your organization enable your well-being? How is your overall well-being of physical, social, mental? How are you on that? There's a scale around that. Does your organization provide you resources and facilities that aids your well-being? So there are specific questions there, right? But you can measure it through those standard instruments very clearly. They're available online.
Thank you for that, Ankur.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to the next question, which is, how do you differentiate between employee happiness and employee engagement? Are they truly separate, or are they deeply intertwined?
This is a very interesting question, and this is a question which is very important. But I think engagement is a more holistic measure, right? And if I'm happy, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm engaged. I'll tell you why. Because engagement is all about happiness. It's also about being productive, right? It's also about that I'm contributing. That's engagement, right? So if I'm working in a public sector unit, which has very, very lean hours of work, and I have a great family life, and I have all the perks, I may be very happy as an employee, but doesn't mean that I'm engaged to the work or the organization, because that contribution equation might not be there, right? So engagement is more holistic. Engagement It's to do more with, what you're contributing, how you're performing, what about your relationships, your happiness, and a lot of other stuff goes into it. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Ankur. Moving on to the next question. So Hiral has a compliment here. Great questions, Raki. Okay. Thank you, Hiral, and everybody. We truly appreciate you liking our questions today, because, of course, the way Ankur has shared the insights, it's made all the difference. So thanks to you, Ankur, also. Now, the other question from Hiral is whether these AI tools are safe to use or not.
I am not the right person to comment on that. There are a lot of discussion on data security which is going on, and this is evolving, right? Even the generative AI is evolving. Your chat GPTs of the world, and your all these are evolving, I would say. But then there are debates that a lot of these companies are tracking your data, and these tools are based on your data actually. So the machine learning is completely based on iterations of improvement done based on your data. So I would not be surprised that some of your information might be getting tracked from a data security point of view, data privacy point of view. So that issue is there. But yeah, till the time you're getting smart answers, you're able to get your work done, and you don't have a identity which is very confidential, and you are in the public domain, it should be fine. That's me.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question, which is, what can I do as an HR professional when the leadership hardly talks for being employee first mindset, explicitly talking about employee well-being, but always talk about hustle, working hard enough to eventually reap the benefits from a business success? Also, there's little to no work-life balance in the organization. So any suggestion maybe for this HR?
Yeah, you should speak up. I think that's the first solution, that you should speak up. You should express yourself. You should share this feedback in the forums, and with the HR in the business and your managers, that possibly this is what I'm feeling. Maybe this has to be, the work culture has to be more balanced. It cannot be only hustle every time. And I'm feeling stressed out. Maybe you can get together with a couple of people, in your team collectively, and go to HR, walk up to your leader, business leader, or whatever, and share that we want to share this feedback with you. This is what we feel. It always helps to be open in these things, right? Because sometimes even the leadership might not be realizing that this is how you are receiving this entire thing. So it's important to create awareness around these things, if you ask me. Otherwise, you will end up taking some radical measures like leaving the company, dropping your performance, getting sick. Those are all extreme repercussions, I would say.
Thank you for that. I think the next question is also like a follow up to this, which is, in organizations where HR focuses on structured planning, but the director believes in creating an environment where people will self motivate, there can be gaps in accountability and productivity. So, in some cases, people might even take advantage of the director's approach. How can this disconnect be addressed to ensure both autonomy and efficiency while maintaining a culture of accountability?
This will always be there. Any organization, that polarization will always be there, right? It's more about autonomy versus micromanagement. And I don't think what we can say that one approach is going to work well. I don't think so. That it cannot be that too much of autonomy is also a problem, right? Then you're not able to drive things, you're not able to control things, and too much of micromanagement impacts the empowerment level and all that. So I think it has to be a right balance of both the approaches, if you ask me. And like I said, it also has to depend on what you're trying to achieve out of it. So if, for example, you are in a phase where the company is undergoing a turnaround, suppose, then your director will be structured, he will be programmatic, he will be hard-fisted, because he is trying to drive a change in the city. He cannot let go of it, right? He cannot kind of give it to you to drive it. He'll be kind of controlling it from his end. So I think you also have to empathize with what is the intent behind that, I would say. If it is to do with the nature or the personality of the individual, again, the feedback helps. Reverse mentorship helps. You can, through your channels or through your friends or through HR, you can get this feedback delivered to them from a leadership development perspective.
Thank you for that, Ankur. Next question is from Krishna Anand. He's asking actually about the AI tool that you mentioned for happiness survey. If you could name the tool.
It was Amber in Fido. It's not a happiness, it's an engagement survey tool. Amber AMBER Infido. If you type, you it's a very common tool nowadays. It's based on AI chatbot.
Okay. Next question is, can you share best practices for how HR can promote psychological safety in teams, especially in the context of remote or hybrid work to support both well-being and performance? I think we did touch upon this, but if you'd like to elaborate.
Look, psychological safety is largely manager driven. If you ask me, again, I feel that you know when will you get up and speak in your team without fear? When will you put your point across? When you get that space, right? It's not that, and many a times you have to do that in the context or the space of your teams. You have to do that. So I would say that uh, the HR should enable the managers and kind of sensitize the managers to kind of create that kind of an environment where people can speak up. Second is the goals and the performance management system of the company should be such that if people are failing on certain aspects or it's okay. So people should have the leeway and the space to take risks. So how much of that, but how much of your performance management system allowing that, right? That's the other point that I have. So yeah, PMS, the managers, these are very important. Culture, anyways, is common across. That gets driven by the behaviors from the leaders and the managers below.
Right. Thank you for that, Ankur. Next question is how to deal with a productive yet impulsive and aggressive employee so as to maintain harmony as well as make them understand processes effectively.
If I understand, you are talking about a team member or a peer, because if you're talking about a person under you or maybe a manager, so if it's a subordinate supervisor relationship, or you have a peer or a colleague who is very good at performance but doesn't behave right, I think so. It'll depend on that. If you ask me, if your manager is not behaving right with you, and but he's a good performer, so you fear about, I think you should give feedback to him clearly, and you should go to the one over manager if needed and raise it. But if it's your peer, I would say that you talk with him or her that always start on this note that I really admire the way you perform. You have been inspiring in terms of your performance, but at the same time, I really don't like the way you talk, the way you behave, and with some examples. So sometimes just telling that you don't behave right doesn't make sense for the other person. You have to give examples, and this approach of saying that in such a situation you behave like that, or you shouted at so and so person in front of me, or you kind of just rushed through the meeting, and those kind of examples, they will kind of create awareness in that person, because sometimes these things are blind spots. I don't know if you know about Johari window, but I don't even know that I have this problem, right? So unless you make me realize and you prove it that what I'm doing is not wrong, I'll not accept it. That's how it has to be. So I would say go and confront the person, and with a positive stroke that I admire that you're a good performer. But yeah, at the same time, these behaviors are not acceptable. If the person doesn't improve after that, please go to the next level, to the manager, to the HR. But these are not acceptable beyond a point.
No, very true. Thank you for that, Ankur. The next question is from Sneha. As in, okay. Yeah, the next question is how do you foresee the future of HR and organizational psychology working together to create more sustainable and psychologically healthy work environment?
Very, very important. I think the organizational psychology is a topic which has not been adopted by organizations yet, but it is much advanced in Western countries. Organization psychology as a science is being adopted by a lot of good organizations, advanced organizations, to build culture, basically. So I think that will be very important going forward. And the principles of organization psychology will have a direct bearing on the mental health, is what I can tell you. The way these are implemented.
Thank you for that, Ankur. I think we are pretty. I think we have covered all the questions. There are a few of repetitive ones, but I think we have already covered those. So I think yes, we are done. We leave we leave it here. But in case anybody else also has any questions, what we are going to be doing, we'll share a thank you mailer with all of you, where Ankur's email ID will also be there. So if you want to directly get in touch with him, you can do that. Have these conversations. I truly love the conversation today, and we also have a Grey Tribe community where we have HR experts like Ankur, where you can connect with us. And if you have any questions, you can just add in your question there, and the experts will able to help you with the responses. So also, as I said in the beginning, the recording of this session will be available on our YouTube channel, and will also be emailed to all of you. So you can always go back, watch the session again, see all the great insights that Ankur shared, and try to implement if that fits within your requirement of the objective that you have at your organization. So thank you so much once again, and special thanks to you, Ankur, for this wonderful conversation today. Employee well-being is such a vast topic, and there's so much to do and there's so much to cover. But what we had today was a great conversation, and it is thanks to you for all this, great insights that you shared with us.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening ahead. We'll connect with you soon for another interesting topic of discussion. Have a great evening.